Hello guys, it's a pleasure to connect with you once again. I'm going to be talking about co-ownership, specifically joint tenancy. Now, we all know what assets are, whether they be landed assets, whether they be investment securities like company shares, company stock, any kind of asset. Under the law, there is something called ownership, right? When you own something, and there is co-ownership. It's possible for one person to own a thing. It's also possible for more than one person to own a thing. It could be land, saying that one person owns land, or two or more people own a particular parcel of land, or a building, or a car, or a company, for example, or different things. Now, under discussing co-ownership under the law, we have two broad categories of co-ownership. Number one is called joint tenancy. Number two is called tenancy in common. Now, joint tenancy is a kind of co-ownership where the ownership interests of the co-owners are undivided. It's an undivided or unpartitioned interest, or like the legal scholars like to say, it is an unsevered ownership, right? There is no severance whatsoever. What this means, as the words imply, is that there is no demarcation line of what the co-owners own. Let's say Mr. A and Mr. B own an asset, right? There is no delineation or demarcation to say this portion belongs to Mr. A and this portion belongs to Mr. B. And what that means is that everything belongs to each person. Using the example of a plot of land or a parcel of land, right? Since there is no delineation, no demarcation of which one is yours and which one is not yours, it means everything belongs to you, right? There is that. Basically, in the case of joint tenancy, you can't have something like trespass, for example, because how can I be trespassing on something that belongs to me, right? So if two or three persons own a parcel of land together, right, you could plant some okra somewhere, right? It's perfectly within your rights. You could plant cassava anywhere you wish. It's perfectly within your rights because everything belongs to you, just like everything belongs to your co-owners. Another thing about joint tenancy is the fact that you can't actually will your interest or your ownership title to your own beneficiaries. Let's say you have children, right? Or you have a spouse, or you have children. Let's just say you have children and you have a will. You will want to say, these are the assets I have, and upon my passing, I would like so and so to have this. In the case of joint tenancy, you can't actually do that, right? That's the law. We have survivorship rights, which is the reason why you can't do that. Under survivorship rights in joint tenancy, what happens is that if any of the co-owners passes on, the ownership interests of that co-owner that passed on automatically passes over to the surviving co-owner. If Mr. A and Mr. B owned an asset that was the interest of the ownership was undivided or unsevered, when any of them dies, let's say Mr. B passes on, his ownership interests pass on to Mr. A. Now Mr. A alone owns everything. If the co-owners were three, Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, and Mr. B passes on, the ownership interest now passes on to Mr. A and Mr. C. Now the property is owned by, or the asset is owned by Mr. A and Mr. C. That is joint tenancy for you. Of course, there are ways by which the co-owners or one of the co-owners can push for a severance of interests, usually through a severance notice and so on and so forth. Then we have what is called tenancy in common. Tenancy in common is where there is a severed or delineated or demarcated title. So two or three persons own, let's say, a parcel of land, but each of them knows what portion of that parcel of land or what portion of that building is theirs, right? So you know that room 1, 2, 3 belong to you. The other person knows room 4, 5, 6 belongs to him or her. This is tenancy in common, right? I know spouses tend to own property together. Sometimes friends tend to own property together. I just thought to bring this to your notice so that you have an idea of the kind of co-ownership you are involved in and the implications. Of course, if you want to know more, it's advisable that you get in touch with an attorney who will advise you on the co-ownership that you're involved in and what your rights and obligations are within that arrangement as the law says. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you were able to learn something. One reason particularly why I wanted to broach this topic is because of married couples who own property together. I hope that this was something useful for you. I had a good time sharing this information with you. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. I remain Barrister Mela Claude, aka your friendly lawyer who always means business.